Hi, I'm Hank Levin. I'm the originator of the InnerTrac Emotional Response Indicator, the GPS for the mind. And I'm here to share with you an experience meeting our friend Tron Enger, who's a master EFT practitioner in Denmark. And he uses the InnerTrac in his practice. And we have an internet connection with him, so I apologize for the quality of the video. But I think you'll find them quite fascinating. And let's get started. Hi, Tron. I want to ask you, could you share with us something about your educational background and what's your experience with EFT?
I started to study psychology in '83, and I've studied psychology, sociology. I've studied a lot of other therapy methods. I am now a master meta health trainer. I'm a master meta EFT trainer.
Mm-hmm.
I am a lot of other credentials as well. I have used EFT for about 7 years. I think I'm rather good in that. And at the moment, I'm using InnerTrac I have used it for about half a year with, I think, maybe 120 clients with exceptional results and interesting results.
Thank you. Why did you decide to devote yourself to EFT?
That is I would call it the urge to help the humankind, to help humans to resolve their trauma, get out of their stuck conditions.
Resolve the trauma?
Resolve their trauma, help them to get out of their traumas, their frozen moments.
Mm-hmm.
That has been my task for, about 30 years, not really task, but I have been devoted to that more or less for at least 30 years.
Very good. And do you use a special form of EFT?
It's like driving a car. You first learn how to use, in Europe, that means you first learn how to use the clutch and you learn how to gear. That's the standard EFT. Then you go over to EFT level 2, which is more advanced driving lessons. Then you learn more about the emotions, you learn more about all those strategies that is stopping you from living. And then you go over to, in my opinion, the highest levels, and that is above any kind of tool, any kind of modality you use, just trying to understand the mind as such, what is really going on. That is, in my opinion, what I think about EFT. It's easy to learn how to drive a car, but you'll have to be an extreme expert to drive on a really fast Indian or whatever track you call it.
Indianapolis.
Yeah, Indianapolis.
Great. And how do you use the InnerTrac in the work you do?
I use it in 2 different ways. Since I am a meta health practitioner, or I'm a master trainer in meta health, I use it to identify the metaphor for the disease. I use it to identify the exact trauma that triggered the disease. I use it to find the exact trauma, when it started, the worst moment of it, and then I start to treat it with EFT. That is the first part of it.
Wow.
Then I use EFT to follow the process while I tap using EFT. I can see if they feel their feeling. I can see if they use the strategies. I can see at once they are releasing something. I can see if they take a break in the releasing of something. I can see that it suddenly stops for a moment, maybe 2 or 3 seconds, take a break, and then continue to release emotions of that single trauma. And I use it to verify that the trauma itself has been released. I have used InnerTrac on every single client for at least half a year. But 2 days ago, I didn't use it. And I had the same intuition. I knew when I finished something, and the meter would have told me that the trauma itself had been released. And I see it at once on InnerTrac.
Fantastic. Thank you. And I have another question here. Do you feel that people can use the InnerTrac on themselves?
Definitely. My viewpoint on this is based on my experience on selling InnerTrac to newcomers. Unless you are able to create that symbiosis with the client, in my opinion, you should learn how to connect with the client first and then use InnerTrac to verify any information you get. That is my deepest meaning. I have had therapists that hadn't learned to create that symbiosis with the client, and they could not use InnerTrac. Ask them to put the InnerTrac away, keep that affinity with the client, keep that symbiosis, and then use InnerTrac to verify any progress in the session. That is my opinion. And when it comes to use it on yourself, you will have to be able to be both the therapist and the client. And you have to be a kind of schizolite, I call it. You'll have to be both roles in a session. You will have to be the therapist asking yourself as a client the question, and then write down and find out what's happening on the meter as a therapist.
I see. Thank you. Yeah, I made exactly the same point in my book, Solo Clearing Manual.
Okay.
Exactly that same point. It's almost like a schizoid thing. You have to be two people at once.
Yeah.
It's
I think
different responsibility.
rather much of a therapist. You will have to be confident in being a therapist in order to process yourself. That's my opinion.
Thank you. And tell me, what kind of trainings do you conduct?
What kind of training I am?
What kind of you do workshops?
Yeah.
And trainings and lectures, I assume.
At the moment, I'm training the basic course of EFT based on Gary Craig's recommendations. And I train EFT level 2, also based on Gary Craig's recommendations. Then I take it to another, what I would call a quantum leap, and I train meta EFT. That is EFT seen from a much higher perspective. Then I start to include the teachings and the knowledge about InnerTrac. In order to get every single detail in the session.
Meta EFT, how do you spell that?
META, and meta means from above, from perspective. And I think that I consider EFT only a tool, and if you are good enough as a therapist, you actually do not need that tool, but the client needs it.
I see. Yes.
Yeah. And then I also educate people in meta medicine or meta health, of course, and do that as well. And I also have workshops with EFT in order to help people to use InnerTrac in a way I think it should be used in order to really use that fantastic tool I think it is.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And where do you teach?
I teach in Norway, in Denmark, in Estonia. Already next week, I think I'm going to Estonia. And I also teach both EFT, Meta Health, and InnerTrac in Egypt, in Cairo, and now in October in Alexandria. And next year, also in Sharm el-Sheikh, Riyadh, and Dubai. So I'm actually traveling all over the world to teach about EFT.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I think you've answered the next question was what programs are you currently conducting in each country? I think you've covered that. Right now, I think you're doing something in Norway at this moment, yes?
Yeah, at the moment I'm in Norway. I'm holding a lecture about how to be a better therapist for some therapists in Norway. And I'm having a lot of fun with that. And it's all about being present in front of another person.
And then your next workshop is where?
I'm still in Norway. In a week, next weekend, I'm holding an EFT training some 4 hours to drive north of Norway, north of Oslo.
Wow.
And it's because I really, from the deepest part of my heart, I really love what I'm doing. So I'm traveling all over if it's necessary to teach people to educate people about EFT and InnerTrac.
Thank you. And what else would you like to tell people who are listening to this interview or reading it?
The InnerTrac as such can be used to verify that you are on the wrong track or on the right track. You can see if the client is feeling his or her feelings, if they are releasing his or her feelings, or if they're using strategies in order to get away from something, to suppress something, to fight against something. You can see it at once.
Mm-hmm.
You can even see when the problem has been solved. And it's rather typical. I was in Egypt 2 weeks ago, and I treated the psychiatrist for her biggest trauma ever.
Mm-hmm.
With the help of InnerTrac, I released it in 12 single minutes.
Wow.
I could see at once when she felt the feeling. I could see at once when she tried to avoid the trauma. And I could see at once when she released the emotions and when she was finished.
What the emotions? I didn't get that.
When they were finished, when they released and when it all was finished. And when she was, what I call, when she was in center. That is my expression of that kind of meditative state of being in center. You see it at once on the meter. So it's a wonderful tool in order to verify and in order not to go through the final stage of a traumatic release.
Fantastic. Thank you very, very much. It's a wonderful opportunity to talk with you.
I really love it. I think I've sold, I don't know how many, but maybe 35 InnerTracs in Norway, Denmark, Estonia, and Egypt.
Egypt?
Yeah, as well. And
it's fascinating.
I'm even holding free workshops with InnerTrac in order to let the people have the very best tool ever. So that is my intent.
It's fascinating that there is such interest in Egypt and United Emirates.
Emirates and Saudi Arabia.
And Saudi Arabia, my goodness. That's fascinating. That would be a whole nother interview.
Yeah. That's an interesting viewpoint, because I think that a lot of people are trapped by their belief system about Muslims and the Arab world. I will say clearly, I have never, ever felt that kind of love from any kind of people anywhere in the world that I felt from the Muslim and Arab community.
Mm.
And do not forget that the Arab community or the Egyptian community was probably far in front of us some 2,000 or 3,000 years ago.
Many years.
And do not forget that. And they are wonderful people. And they are really eager to learn and to learn alternative medications and medicine.
Mm.
And they are probably going to set up a university in order to honor that and honor those different ideas.
Wow, thank you. That's wonderful.
Yeah,
Well, we'll have to stay on top of that and find out how that's going. Thank you, Tron, so much.
I'm so delighted. So delighted. I really am.